Concerns over rising US deficit and the poor show at the Treasury auction spooked the markets. Auto, FMCG and IT stocks are the big drags. The IndusInd Bank stock gains on the hopes that the worst may be behind for the lender, but analysts remain wary of more skeletons spilling out of the cupboard, even as the bank suspects internal fraud and continues its hunt for a new CEO. IndiGo Airlines owner Interglobe Aviation sees its profits soar as high traffic aided by the Mahakumbh rush, festivals and weddings drive up income and realizations, with forex gains also kick in. The company also declares a 10 rupee dividend, the first since 2019. Softening urban demand and intensifying competition lead to Colgate-Palmolive missing revenue expectations even as profit comes in line with expectations. The oral care major hopes for a revival in the second half of the year. And SEBI will give its final word on the weekly expiry soon, says Chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey, even as CNBC-TV18 learns that the NSE has applied to shift its expiry day to Tuesday from Thursday. Pandey adds that SEBI may look into any violations by IndusInd Bank that merit attention. Good afternoon, you're with us here on Business Lunch. We are coming to you live from the CNBC-TV18 Motilal Oswal studios. I am Hormus Patakia. Well, it's not a very good day for the market so far. Of course, it is the weekly options expiry. We are coming in on the back of some very weak global cues as well, considering the bond market tensions that are flaring up in the United States. And that has had a sentiment way down on Wall Street. And that has spilled over onto our own markets as well. Not to forget, today being the weekly options expiry of the Nifty contracts, that's weighing down on sentiment as well. 960, almost 1,000 point cut now on the Sensex, and almost 300 point cut on the Nifty, near at the lowest point of the day as well. So a forgettable day so far for the bulls. But of course, it is expiry, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the final couple of hours of the trading session, whether we see a recovery from that all-important 24,500 mark, which the bulls are trying to defend, or whether we see further downside from these levels. Of course, the losses being led by the index heavyweights, Reliance and HDFC Bank among the top contributors to the downside. Mahindra and Mahindra is the other major contributor along with ICICI Bank. Of course, we are tracking earnings from three Nifty companies today, be it Sun Pharma, ITC and Grasim. And Sun Pharma might be reporting results during market hours, but generally we'd expect results from ITC and Grasim after market hours. So we'll be keeping an eye out on those names. And there are earnings reactions as well that we need to track. Colgate-Palmolive is one of them. We just mentioned in the headlines as well, 5.5% lower on the stock, the top loser on the Nifty 500 in today's trading session. But on the gaining side, Fortis Healthcare 8.5% higher after some very strong management commentary coming in on the earnings call. That is among the leading gainers. Garden Reach Shipbuilders is now at the highest point of the day, 6% higher on the stock after it emerged as the lowest bidder for that 25,000 crore Indian Navy project for the next generation Corvette vehicle. So Garden Reach, a good day in the office. But of course, all eyes today were on IndusInd Bank as to how the stock reacts after being a weak fourth quarter that was weighed down by accounting issues, the MFI stress as well. The stock opened lower, then recovered and is now again below the flat line. Abhishek is here to tell us what brokerages are making of the numbers. Abhishek.
Well, as you mentioned, it's one of the weak counter that we saw with respect to the results coming in, and largely it was factored in. The stock is flat right now, and if you take a look at the earnings, it's been one of the worst earnings in the banking sector from top to bottom across various parameters. Corporate book declining by as much as 15.7% sequentially. It's not seen ever before. It's also, the highest decline that you are seeing amongst all the other larger private banks. The net interest income decline of 43% YOY and 42% sequentially, highest decline in the banking sector. The net interest margin for them is the lowest ever that they have seen historically, coming in at 2.25%. Other income was down sharply by more than 71% YOY and about 70% sequentially. The only bank to report an operational loss in Q4 FY25 and the bank to report highest net loss in Q4 FY25. Slippages were elevated, 5,014 crore. The annualized slippage ratio is the highest in last 16 quarters, coming in at 5.8%. Asset quality gross NPA ratio is perhaps the highest that you are seeing in last 10 years or even more, and they have used their entire contingent provision of 1,325 crores. With reference to the P&L, both the NI and PAT is below our poll. Coming on to brokerages, they have cut earning estimate anywhere between 35 to 40% on an average, and as high as 45% by Motilal Oswal. Loan growth to be in single digits, and they say that return ratios will remain tepid over the next couple of years for the IndusInd Bank. Back to you.
Abhishek, thanks a lot for that. And staying with IndusInd, Ritu is now joining in with the key takeaways from the earnings call that IndusInd Bank held last evening.
Well, after posting its biggest ever quarterly loss driven by multiple accounting lapses that are now being labelled as fraud, IndusInd Bank is promising a full clean-up. In an unusual move, we had Sunil Mehta, who is the bank's part-time non-executive chairman, personally addressing analysts on the earnings call, calling the developments since March unfortunate and painful. Now, he acknowledged that the board was not informed of these discrepancies at the time of approving results earlier, but assured stakeholders that now the bank is taking comprehensive corrective action. He sought to allay concerns, saying auditors have now conducted deep dive reviews with expanded sample sizes to adequately and fairly account for any past lapses in the fourth quarter earnings, and that the board now suspects a fraud against the bank that involves certain employees and is pursuing legal action, including reporting to investigative agencies and regulatory authorities. He also reiterated that the board's approach is to start FY26 on a clean slate, with all known financial impacts already absorbed in the FY25 numbers. The chairman also disclosed that RBI has advised the bank to submit proposals for the appointment of a new CEO for its approval by the end of June, and that the board is in advanced stages of the selection process and is hopeful of submitting these recommendations ahead of the deadline. So now, while there may be questions on the auditors and the board's own accountability and how quickly a new CEO is appointed and is able to steady the ship, the biggest question for now is whether the worst is behind. And to that, all that the management has to say is that the full financial impact of all the known irregularities has been accounted for, and to the best of their understanding, no further issues remain.
Ritu, thanks a lot for that. That's the sum and substance of IndusInd Bank. A choppy move seen in today's trading session, but has to be the stock that we've been tracking since the morning. More earnings then. IndiGo reported a good fourth quarter with festivals, weddings, the Mahakumbh taking their profit beyond 3,000 crore rupees. Earlier, we spoke to the CEO, Peter Elvers, and he discussed the company's FY26 capacity and revenue growth outlook and how Operation Sindoor affected flight operations for the airline. Listen in.
You know, for FY25, we've given a capacity guidance in the early double-digit growth. That's the capacity guidance we have. Obviously, with an 87% load factor as we had in last year, that capacity guidance should not be too far off from the traffic guidance we're giving to the market. So again, early double-digit is the capacity guidance we've given for FY26 going forward. So the overall impact of that is relatively limited, and clearly what we have done is we reallocated some of our flights to the southern part of India and basically are growing from there. Post the ceasefire, the flights have been reinstated, and all the 170 cancellations have been reinstated by the end of last week, and we're sort of back to a regular operation. That clearly has an impact on May, but again, it's more in the single-digit range when it comes to capacity impact. We have seen a drop in bookings, as we just shared also in the call, but that seems to have bottomed out. And actually, we see now the first signs of people picking up bookings again, and the resilience of the market is actually quite strong. If I see where we are now, we ended up the last quarter with the AOG number in the 50s. The quarter prior to that, we've ended up in the 60s, and today we're somewhere in the 40s. So, you know, we've moved down from 60s to 50s to 40s today. So clearly, we see a steady improvement of that situation. And when we said we have turned the corner, it clearly is, and I guess that trend we expect to continue going forward. So that means by the time we turn the corner 1 year back, we probably should be around half of that by the time 1 year is passed.
IndiGo, one of the other earnings reactions today, and at least 8 analysts who have coverage on the stock expect that to cross levels of 6,000 and beyond, 1.25% higher for IndiGo. But our role is limited to the issuance of just PAN cards, and that is the word coming in from Suresh Sethi of Protean eGov Technologies after the Income Tax Department did not shortlist the company for the PAN 2.0 project. Now, he told CNBC TV18 earlier in the day that they are looking to expand into sectors like agri, healthcare, ONDC and identity services. Listen in.
Current business continues as is, and equally important is the fact that the PAN 2.0 from deployment or allotment is going to be another 18 months journey, and it will be looking at online channels at that stage. There are basically 3 rounds of, if you may, a qualification. There's a pre-qual, there's a qualification, and there's the price discovery at which multiple bidders go in and there's a fair and transparent way of discovering the price of the project. This was at the qualification stage where along with us, the other competitors have also been in a way indicated that they didn't make it to the last round, and one final competitor has made it to the last round. The other area where we were looking at was a SaaS sort of a business model where you are creating the demand and supply applications. Now, the demand and supply applications clearly get linked to the fact that as the network grows and there is more consumption, you will get paid for every transaction. So we hope, as we've seen, that ONDC is gaining traction. There has been growth, but clearly we have to hit an inflection point, and the SaaS revenues are what will pick up from here onwards. So the past year, we had around 8 CR of revenue coming from the core stack, and the revenue coming from the SaaS business was pretty limited at this stage.
The management there of Protean eGov Technologies. Take a short break. On the other side, Donald Trump re-emphasizes his role in brokering a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also gives his take on the events that unfolded leading up to that move. Welcome back. Now, sources are telling CNBC TV18 that SEBI may soon release its circular on the weekly index expiry days. Yash, who broke the news earlier in the day, is joining in for that. Yash, tell us more.
So that's correct, Hormaz. The big update as far as fixing the days for weekly expiry for exchanges is concerned, that the final set of regulations from market regulator SEBI could come as soon as tomorrow, that is Friday, or by next week. That is the outer limit that we've been given to understand from our sources. Now, under that, the big thing is that the largest stock exchange, the National Stock Exchange or NSE, has applied with market regulator SEBI seeking Tuesday to be the day of expiry for NSE. Now, what that does, if in a situation where Tuesday is given to the National Stock Exchange, then it leaves BSE with Thursday as the day of expiry. Both exchanges cannot have their expiry on the same day. This is what SEBI has already, mentioned as a part of its consultation paper. Tuesday and Thursday are going to be the 2 days, and if NSE gets Tuesday, then BSE would be left with Thursday. What also we've been given to understand from our sources is that market regulator SEBI is actively considering NSE's request when it comes to getting Tuesday as the day for its expiry. The Secondary Markets Advisory Committee that very recently had its meeting where the regulations around expiry dates were finalized. They will be suggested to market regulator SEBI, and the final regulations would be out, as I said, latest by next week. But this is a very important development and rather a negative for BSE, because in a situation where NSE gets Tuesday as its expiry day, sources suggest that this could lead to a migration of as much as 20% of volumes away, options volumes away from BSE, and large part of it could come to NSE because the expiry there would be just at the start of the week. Also, it could possibly, according to sources, lead to an increase of market share of about 5% when it comes to the options market, options contracts for the National Stock Exchange.
Indeed, it's showing up on the stock price of BSE as well. Yes, thanks a lot for that. At one point, the stock was down almost 5.5–6%. There's a slight recovery from the lows, almost 3.75% lower currently for BSE. But on that subject, here's also a reaction from the SEBI chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey on the possible SEBI circular from the sidelines of the ASSOCHAM event.
We will just be, right now, whatever is a framework, it's there, and we will be issuing post the consultation paper, the comments we have analyzed, that committees have met, and soon we will be issuing further clarification on that.
So that will take a month, 2 months?
No, I think within this month.
So will it be a
They'll shift to Tuesday.
No, those days are fixed now, those 2 days.
In fact, my colleague Shivani also asked the NSE MD and CEO Ashish Kumar Chauhan on that SEBI circular. Listen to what he had to say.
Question from you is that there is a lot of talk today about the expiry day circular from SEBI. What is NSE's take on it? Is there a day that you have decided?
No, we have not been aware we are getting it from you, but whatever the decisions of SEBI, we will have to go by.
And shifting focus now to global stories, US President Donald Trump has once again repeated his claim that he settled the recent conflict between India and Pakistan through trade. Now, this was during his White House meeting with the South African president. Listen to what he said.
If you take a look at what we just did with Pakistan and India, we settled that whole thing, and I think I settled it through trade. We're doing a big deal with India, we're doing a big deal with Pakistan, and I said, what are you guys doing? Somebody had to be the last one to shoot, but the shooting was getting worse and worse, bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper into the countries. Pakistan has got some excellent people and some really good, a great leader. And India is my friend, Modi. And he's a mutual friend. Yeah, he's a great guy. And I called them both, and we just did something good.
Welcome back. On to some national updates. Then Supreme Court has called out the Enforcement Directorate on their probe into Tamil Nadu's liquor corporation, saying that it has, quote-unquote, crossed all limits. Ashmit is joining in now with more on this. Ashmit.
Well, what we understand is that the Tamil Nadu government made a move towards the apex court, basically to challenge some of the ED raids that were conducted in the state back in the month of March. Now, all of this pertains to the alleged liquor scam in the state. Of course, just for context, it's TASMAC. It's a state-owned body which is responsible for marketing and retailing of liquor in the state. That's what the ED investigation is all about. The concern, however, that the Supreme Court today expressed is that how is it that the ED went about conducting raids, conducting surveys, when there are already FIRs that have been registered by the state police. This, the Supreme Court said, is tantamount to breaching of all limits, especially as how the state police has already filed the FIRs, there is action already underway, and therefore this is something that constitutes a breach of the federal structure of our constitution, breaches the state-center relationship, and that is something that led to the Supreme Court, headed by a bench no less than the CJI, fuming at the Enforcement Directorate. So what the fallout of that essentially is, the Supreme Court for now has stayed all ED investigations into the TASMAC matter. ED was claiming it's a 1,000 crore rupee scam. We need to investigate it. The Supreme Court hitting the pause button, saying that, look, no further investigations till we hear this case again. Not only that, the Supreme Court has directed the Enforcement Directorate to come back with a response justifying its actions going ahead with this investigation, with the raids, even though there were already FIRs registered in this case. With respect to the FIRs, TN government clarifying, Tamil Nadu government clarifying, they're not defending any of the accused. All they're saying is that there are already 41 FIRs registered between 2014 and 2021. There's absolutely no grounds for the ED to investigate, and certainly not to pick up, round up devices of the accused and clone them and keep a copy of it with them. These are actions extremely egregious, unconstitutional, and something that the Apex Court has something to say about. This case, we understand, is likely to be taken up in the month of July.
Ashmit, thanks a lot for that important update. But with that, we call time on this edition of Business Lunch. We are seeing a slight recovery from the lows of the day, only marginal, but the bulls are fighting tooth and nail to protect that 24,500 level on the Nifty. From me and the team that put this show together, thank you so much for watching. Midcap Radar on the other side.